My kids will complain that it's the worst to have a clinical psychologist for a dad because they always have to earn everything. They don't just get anything. And they have little behavior charts and all of those things growing up. Maybe I know a little too much about parenting research. That's what they would say. But I think overall, everything's worked out okay.
Hey, what is up, everybody? It's Ed Gow Jr. of the Dad Central Show on Dad Central. And I think I'm going to come out of the woods because Drew's here. Hey, Drew.
Hey, Ed. Drew Solon from Dad Central and the Dad Central Show also here. I'm not in the woods. I'm also not in the doghouse. So those are good things, right? Well, I say not in the doghouse, but the reality is, we had to make a decision recently in our family, and it's been challenging, but I think absolutely the right decision. So maybe in the doghouse. No, with Kristen, one of the kids. Yeah, that's okay.
All right, no problem.
How are you today?
I'm outstanding. I'm even more outstanding because the Dad Central Show is sponsored by Dove Men Plus Care. Dove Men Plus Care believes that care is the best of men because when men care for themselves and others, there is a positive impact. I am outstanding today. It's nice to get some sunshine today. It was nice to wake up and nice, wonderful. It's a little chilly, but it's warmer than it was over the last few days. So just having the sunshine out was good. Get that vitamin D happening because obviously as winter approaches in this part of the world, we'll certainly get our dreary days, but taking advantage of it and probably get a little bit more leaves, have some warmer weather to do the raking of the leaves, How about you?
Well, being, I guess, transparent in the decision I had to make. So, Sophia had a cell phone that Kristen did not fully support her having. It was given to her by her dad. And unfortunately, we've had to create limits and restrictions, which I think are healthy. And for a long time, those limits and restrictions just haven't been honored or respected. So we had to make a decision. The decision was she no longer has access to her cell phone. So I personally, you know how I feel about this. I mean, she turned 13 at the end of August. My personal belief, cell phones should be nowhere around anyone who's that age. I tell my kids, when you can pay for a cell phone, that's when you might be able to get one. But until then, I'm not giving you one. And I just did an informal poll of a few of my friends. And I think the most insightful, valuable comment that I think really affirms our decision was, we view cell phones like cigarettes. And I think that's very wise because cigarettes come with a Surgeon General's warning. It can kill you. Quite frankly, cell phones and what they do to your mental and emotional state can kill you and actually can have you harm others. So it's pretty important, and I agree wholeheartedly. Maybe another podcast, or maybe even our guest today can shed some light on the negative effects of cell phones and young people. But
yeah, I think that's interesting. Looking forward to get our friend. We can't call him a guest anymore. I don't think he's.
You're right.
No, he's way past the guest. He's a friend. He's the OG. He's in the OG family of the Dad Central Show and Dad Central. I find it interesting. We may want to put up a poll on our YouTube channel or on our Facebook page saying, what age, or I don't know, something about what age is a good age for a child to have a cell phone? I'd be very interested to see what sort of feedback there is, because I've seen kids as young as 6-7 years old have cell phones.
Well, I'm going to make a pretty bold statement here, but that's what I believe. I think if you give a kid that age a cell phone, you're an idiot.
Oh,
flat out, like you are an idiot, and you can make rationalizes, or why would you ever give a 6-year-old a cigarette? No.
Okay.
So why would you do the same thing with a cell phone?
Okay. So
anyways, let's digress.
One other thing. What about 6-year-olds having a tablet?
Well, if you have reasonable, healthy limits and you know exactly what you are putting on that tablet for that child, maybe there's an educational opportunity for it, but it has to be with limits, and it has to be according to an understanding of that child's developmental age and stage. And if you don't have that understanding and you just kind of carte blanche say, here you go, here's a device, you can just use it however you want with no supervision or limits, you're an idiot.
Okay, well, maybe that'll become that clip may go viral.
And if that's the case, I'll have to do it. But I feel so strongly about it because it's damaging and detrimental to our young people. And if you do not pay attention to that, it can wreak havoc down the road. Final statement about this.
Okay.
Kristen was in the store the other day. Mom was complaining about the fact that her young teen had a cell phone, lamenting the fact that she should have given it or not. The cashier was kind of older and kind of understanding and being reasonable. From behind them, this young 20-something man says, excuse me, I just overheard your conversation. I want you to know, I was that teen who my parents wouldn't give me a cell phone, and I didn't like it. I was unhappy about it. But right now, I am so grateful that they made that decision, because of the 4 friends that I was close with who all had cell phones, 3 of them have mental health issues. One of them I barely talk to now, and his life is not going in the right direction. They've all struggled as a result of it. To me, the decision my parents made, I'm so grateful for now. What more evidence do you need?
Well, there's so many different ways, but we do have a friend we want to bring on the conversation.
Yes, sorry.
But I think this is definitely a precursor, maybe to more conversation today and down the road, because I know there'll be some people who would push back on you.
That's okay. They can push back all they want.
No,
they're not in my house.
I know that. But it'd be a very interesting conversation topic for future episodes. Sure. But you know what? We do have a friend here. We have the OG here. So we need to bring him on and give him a proper introduction. So that I hand to you.
All right. Well, we're blessed to have Dr. Gregory Fabiano as a friend of the Dad Central Show. He's a professor of psychology at Florida International University. He's a core faculty member in the Clinical Science in Child and Adolescent Psychology doctoral program and the Center for Children and Families. He is a clinical psychologist and also a dad to 3 children. And I do believe 2 of them are teenagers. 1 just turned 20. So, Dr. Fabiano, welcome to the show.
Welcome back.
Thanks very much for having me. So nice to see old friends.
Very good to see you also. Do we want to
thank you for your patience as I unfortunately shared and maybe ranted a little bit, but I feel very strongly about this issue. But that's not why we're here to talk to you. We're here to talk to you and hear from your experience and expertise. So thanks again for being here.
Okay, but you know I gotta find out. Do you have any takes on what Drew shared, Greg?
Well, I can tell you, I have a 13-year-old daughter, and she was the last one out of everyone she knows, according to her, for a long time. But then we verified it, to get a cell phone. Okay. And finally, we relented with a lot of limits and restrictions on what she can do on it. But I think I side with Drew on this one. I really am sorry about how it just wipes out interpersonal interactions when kids are together. They all have their heads down looking at a screen instead of talking and laughing and playing together, and let alone all the risks we know are out there. So it is certainly worthy of more discussion.
Absolutely. Drew, go ahead. You're on fire.
It could be in trouble. Who knows?
No, it's all good.
That's okay. I stand by my comments. So we have typically had you on as a guest expert, sharing your wisdom, your insight, all the work that you've done. And we're definitely going to get that today. But our show typically starts with a little bit of backstory of our guests. And so we haven't done that with you yet. So we'd love it if you could just share a little bit of your early years, before you became, Dr. Fabiano. And then maybe we'll transition into your fatherhood. But start by telling us a little bit more about what life was like for you growing up, your early fatherhood experience.
Sure. I grew up in Western New York and right outside of Buffalo. And I was oldest of 6 kids. I have 3 brothers and 2 sisters. And loved sports as a kid. Remember a lot of baseball games and just in the schoolyard without any adults around at all. A bunch of kids getting together, throwing around a football or kicking a soccer ball. And then my true passion in middle school was basketball. And as I look back, I now understand I wasn't very good at sports, but I really did enjoy it. And that's something that maybe so a place where my own father had a pretty big role coaching sports or bringing me to sports. And he worked a lot, but I can recall him being almost always on the sideline of every game. And that's something I remember fondly. And then I went away to college, and my first job, I was working in a program for kids with challenging behaviors, and a large part of their day was spent in sports. And I think I revisited the passion I had for sports, not anymore as a player, but as somebody who is watching kids gain and develop from it. And that's a thread I think that I've interwoven into a lot of the research I've done since that time. And that's certainly been a big part of my own journey through fatherhood. I've always really, probably my favorite memories involve coaching my kids in the sports that they play, and it's something I still continue. I'm on my last run with my 13-year-old daughter right now. I have practice later today with her varsity basketball team from middle school, and it's a really good team this year. To look out for them. They are a pretty good group, so I think we'll have a good season.
Was sports something that your dad encouraged you to do?
Yes, I mean, that's something that I think he always did growing up. And thinking back, growing up, we always had equipment in the yard. There's a pitch back to practice throwing a baseball. We always had a basketball hoop in the driveway. That would be something I'm sure a lot of people have good memories of playing catch, maybe in the evening after Dad got home from work. That's certainly something we did, or he'd have a bucket of baseballs to practice hitting in the field near our house. And so that's certainly something we spent a lot of time doing.
Drew, go ahead.
I'm curious. 6 kids, that's a full household, right? You were the oldest, so you're the big brother. I'm just more curious to know, how do you think your dad was able to navigate, at least from your perspective, the attention and being there for 6 different kids?
Yeah, that's a good question. It is a lot of kids. Certainly, I think he probably partnered well with my mother, and they divided and conquered plenty of times. But we also did a lot of family activities. He was usually around on the weekend, and we would do things together as a family. There's a pretty big gap between my youngest brother and myself of 12 years. So some of us were kind of aging out of the household, as some of them were maybe aging into some of those activities. So by distributing kids across a number of years, maybe that also helped as well.
Did you ever feel that you didn't get enough, of your dad's attention compared to your siblings?
Yeah, no, I never had that feeling at all. No, I'm a child of the '80s, so that's the decade where they basically sent you out the door and said, "Don't come home until it's dinner time." And so when I think about my upbringing, it's very different than the upbringing that I see for families these days, where there's a lot of scheduled events and families are going together to take their child to a dance class or to a sports activity or something like that. Back in the '80s, we just got on our bikes and rode over to a friend's house and started up a street hockey game or threw a football around. And so I never had a sense like I was missing anything. I think that maybe in the current generation of kids, there's a little bit of a different setup in the way families spend time with their kids. And there's certainly a lot more activities that are structured and scheduled available than I ever recall growing up. For example, I don't remember sports other than t-ball and baseball being something until middle school years. And now they have the bitty ball with kids with basketballs or soccer balls at 4 years old running around with their parents supporting them. So that's been a change, I think, in the way we set things up.
Other than, Dad encouraging you in the area of sports, what other things, if any, have you taken from your younger days relationships with your dad that you continue on today?
Well, I think he was an excellent model of a good work ethic. He worked a lot, and we were certainly not well off at any point, but I never felt like we were wanting for anything as we're growing up. And I mentioned showing up for sports events and things like that. I think that was a simple way to show interest and engagement and care for what was going on. If you looked out in the stands and saw your parent there, that was a good feeling when you're a kid. And he always modeled good care for everybody that was in the house. Certainly that's something I've tried to do as I've grown up as well.
That's really amazing to share that about your dad and raising 6 kids. That's dad and mother. That's pretty outstanding. It's a great testimony. Drew?
Yeah. Well, maybe then let's transition into your journey into fatherhood, right? And so can you tell us, were there any fears, any hopes, any challenges that came up in the process? And then how did you manage them?
Well, I always liked being around kids. I was the oldest of a lot of kids, so did a lot of babysitting growing up. And then when I went to college, I decided I wanted to be in psychology. I was coaching my younger brother's little league teams at that time and really enjoyed that. And then when I started working in this program for kids with challenging behaviors, they had a summer camp for 8 weeks where the kids, who often were maybe the kids that didn't have a lot of friends or weren't always successful in sports settings or group settings like their classroom, they would come for 8 weeks to an intensive program to learn social skills and skills that would make them more successful in the classroom. And coaching them in sports was really fun because even some of the older kids, 8 or 9 or 10-year-olds, they didn't have really great sports skills or know all the rules of the game because of their behavior, they had been kind of shuffled off of their little league teams, or maybe their coach said to the parent, you know what, I don't think your kid is ready to be on the ice for hockey, maybe next year. And so what would happen is they would show up 4th, 5th grade and not know how to do all the other things the other 4th and 5th grade students would know how to do on the playground or in phys ed class or on the sports teams they're on. So in those 8 weeks, we worked really hard to get them shaped up so they would know the rules of the game and how to play. And I really enjoyed that. And right in the middle of my graduate school training where I was learning how to do that, I got married. I married well out of my pay grade and made sure to not screw up that choice. And we had our son right in the middle of graduate school, and I was thrilled. I still remember looking back and thinking about how instantaneously all the things I thought were important before weren't important anymore. Mm-hmm. And I really was excited about raising a child and being present. And I think to some degree that threaded through my own research interests. I was running a lot of parenting groups at that time. One of the things we would do with the parents of the kids we were working with is teach them positive behavior support strategies. And maybe because I was a new father myself, I was struck by how most of the groups didn't have fathers in them at all. It was mostly made up of mothers. And so at that time, I mentioned that to my advisor, and he said, well, we should look in the research literature to see what people have done to support fathers. And we were both struck by the fact that there wasn't much at all in the research that would inform us at all. And he said, well, this would be a good topic for you to do for your dissertation. And so that's what I did. And that's kind of how I started to get interested in what do fathers do and how do they do it well? And what can we do to better include them in the sorts of supportive interventions that we use?
So the early years of your study, how were those? And being a father, so you're going to graduate school and a first-time father. Was there a little juggling going on once in a while?
Yeah, there was a lot of juggling. I did make a rule for myself at that time that I would just stop work at 5 o'clock so I could pick them up from daycare, and that would mean sometimes going back to doing work at 10 o'clock at night. But we made sure that happened, and that's been a good habit for me because it helped me set some limits for myself at work. I never fell behind on anything, but I also made sure that I had some good time with my son and then my daughters later from dinner time on till they were settling down for bed. And yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. And with each child that you had, and also working in the field, did your fatherhood role change because you're raising 3 kids, 3 different ages, plus you're studying dads. You're surrounded by it, like whether you're sleeping or awake, you're surrounded. How did that impact you during especially those early years?
Yeah, so I can remember pretty vividly my son's first well visit at the pediatrician. I thought, well, I'm going to be a really involved, engaged dad. I'm gonna go to these pediatrician visits, and I was in the room. My wife was there with the newborn, and I just felt like a big doofus because they only had one chair in the room. There was nowhere for me to sit, and so I was always in the way. I was in the way of the scale. I was in the way of where the doctor sat. I was in the way of the whole appointment. And I remember thinking, well, here's a good thing I should be studying. There's a direct message sent to the parent that really we're only expecting one parent to show up for this. And if another person shows up, we're not really prepared for that. And that informed my work with families, where we started to invite both parents to come to interviews about their child, to engage in our programs and those sorts of things. There are small changes we made, but changes that I think I discovered navigating my own journey as a father with my child. And then, my kids will complain that it's the worst to have a clinical psychologist for a dad because they always have to earn everything. They don't just get anything. And they have little behavior charts and all of those things growing up. And maybe I know a little too much about parenting research. That's what they would say. But I think overall, everything's worked out okay.
Excellent. Drew?
Well, let's dig a little bit deeper, and we're going to say, what's been maybe the biggest challenge that you have faced personally as a dad?
So, I would say it's easy to know about what the research says about being a strong parent. It's way harder to do, especially with your own kids. I found that you can give lots of good advice for other people's kids, but when you have the emotional connection with a child and something goes wrong, it's really hard to tamp down strong feelings of frustration or sometimes anger, or sometimes disappointment, and keep your eye on the prize that, this is a journey that you're going through for a long period of time. And keeping your eye on the long-term goals as opposed to, boy, I'm really tired tonight, and you're doing this thing that we've been over 1,000 times you're not supposed to do, and you're doing it again, and now we have to talk about this again. I think all parents wrestle with that, right? Kids know what buttons to push, especially when you're tired. I would say that that's probably the biggest challenge. How do you disentangle any feelings in any given moment from your goals as a parent of what you want to achieve in terms of making a long-term impact on these little people you're raising?
Okay. Well, thank you for that. I just want to acknowledge, for everyone who's listening, we have a fatherhood expert who's also a father and acknowledges how challenging it is to manage yourself during those difficult times. And you said, disentangle those emotions. So if you are out there and you're finding yourself struggling with it, there's hope. And also know you're not alone, right? We all go through these moments. It doesn't mean you're a bad parent. It doesn't mean that you're going to ruin your kid. It doesn't mean that they're going to be, you're going to have all these, things you're going to have to undo. It just means you're human. And what, so maybe, Greg, if you could tell us, so what's helped you then as a dad, but also with this amount of knowledge with you, to be able to move through those moments and come on the other side and continue towards the end goal in this fatherhood journey?
Well, I have a great partner who kind of can sometimes help me, guide me in the right direction, or sometimes has some insight into what's going on with the kids that I don't have. And so communicating very frequently with her has been something we've always done. And we've always had a really good approach to the kids, I think, where we put each other first and we're on the same page with what we're going to do. And even if we disagree, we never disagree in front of the kids. We save that for later when they're not around. And usually it's me who's having to go backtrack and fix something. But that's been a good approach. And we listen to the kids too. Not always. Sometimes their point of view is not the right one. I go back to the cell phone point of view, little people don't necessarily see all the angles. They just see one, right? And so it's up to us as adults to sometimes set limits, or to be the bad guy, or maybe the monitor or the manager, and that's not always the best role to be in. It's not certainly not a fun one, but it's a necessary one in lots of situations.
Okay, thank you for that.
There's a question, a conversation piece I want to put out. I don't know if it's good to put it out now or later. Well, let me just put it out now. You've been studying dads for a long time. You've been a dad for a long time. Through both those lenses, personally and professionally, how has the role of a father changed through your lens?
So I think that a positive is that the role of fatherhood is expanded in contemporary generations. You can think back to when TV first came out in the 1940s and 50s, the dad was almost kind of like a separate part of the shows. Off at work, would show up for dinner, and then you wouldn't ever see the father again, maybe except if the kid was going to get scolded or in trouble. I think now that we currently we have a very broad scope that we can use to encapsulate what fathers do, and I would paint the word father with a broad brush. This could be anyone who serves in a caregiving role for the child. That might be serving the role of a mentor or a teacher or a supporter, or just someone who's available to help out if needed. And I think that that's a positive about society these days, that we are not just kind of sidelining dads to a very constrained role, and that's all that they can do. I think now we would be incorporating dads in lots of areas of positive child development where they can make a big difference.
Yeah, and what I really love about that is I think you've been part of that change, because when you described your experience in the doctor's office and saying, oh, well, now I can study this, but I can also make some of these positive changes in terms of how fathers are engaged, how fathers are treated, how fathers are included in the whole parenting journey, right from before the child's even born through birth, and then as they age and grow and develop. So it's really important, I think, to have fathers feel that sense of inclusion in the parenting process. Right. When I first started at Dad Central, Brian Russell, who did this role before me, talked about dad's frustrations when people would see them out. And, oh, it's so nice to see dad babysitting, and they would say it to him too. And he's like, I'm not babysitting. I'm a parent. These are my kids, right? Like this is part of my role. So to see that shift, I think is really positive. Anyways, I just wanted to add that in. Ed.
Yeah, I love how you see that brush. Then I'm going to flip it. What are some of the potential concerns you still are seeing, or ones that have arisen during your personal and professional fatherhood journey?
So I think that I view myself as a work in progress. I think I can always do better in my job. I reflect a lot on my parenting. I reflect a lot on, am I doing enough? I think all dads, or many dads probably have those kinds of self-reflections. I do spend a lot of time coaching my kids at sports, and I do see a lot of things that I think I would like that would work better. So instead of yelling at the referees or yelling at the kids, focusing on complaints and negatives. I don't think any kid ever grows up and thinks about, boy, I'm really glad about that time my dad chewed out the umpire at my game, right? It's not something that's going to be part of any good memory. What kids will remember is that they felt like they were being successful, or they had a good moment in the activity, and their parent was there to share in that, and maybe convey concretely that they were proud of them, or that was a good thing. And we in our parenting programs, we spend time talking about the things like the the ride home shouldn't be focused on all the things your kid should do better next time. That's not what any kid wants to hear right after an activity. They would rather hear about what they did well. And then if there's something that needs to be coached up, you work with the coach to talk about that, or maybe that's something you spend some time in the evening working on in a time that doesn't send such a negative message, like you didn't do so well, and so now I'm going to give you a critique. And those are things that I think all parents can do. Now, that's hard to do, right? Because as adults, when we see something we want to be different, we usually comment about it with our children, and sometimes letting things go or choosing our battles is a really good strategy to use, so that kids do feel supported and continue to want that parent attention, because it's positive for them.
Are you a dad who feels like you're juggling a million things at once? Balancing work, family, and personal goals can be overwhelming. But what if there was a solution? That's why we created our new fatherhood community called Dad Mentor. For over 20 years, Dad Central has built practical tools to help dads. We understand the challenges you face and provide the support you need to thrive. The biggest complaint we hear from dads is there's no dedicated support for their specific needs. But not anymore. Our new community, called Dad Mentor, is here to transform your fatherhood experience. Imagine feeling in control, staying calm and patient when your children misbehave. Picture yourself connected to your children, guiding them with confidence and watching them succeed. When you join Dad Mentor, you'll have access to a community of like-minded dads committed to their dad journey, just like you. You'll also get the Dad's Roadmap. This is a step-by-step plan to help you go from unsure to unstoppable as a dad. Monthly masterclasses and Q&A sessions. You'll get answers and know exactly what to do straight from experts. Monthly group meetups that connect dads over common topics. A dad's resource library. Curated webinars, podcasts, or guides built by Dad Central to help you grow as a parent. And finally, you'll also get exclusive members-only offers and events. Now, many dads do try to do this fatherhood thing alone, only to find themselves trapped in frustration and strained relationships. Then they may turn to unhealthy coping mechanisms like drugs, alcohol, or other distractions, leaving their family and their own well-being at risk. We don't want you to reach that point of regret. Take steps to invest in you and your family today. Join Dad Mentor and go from stressed, tired, and overwhelmed to confident, calm, and connected. Join us today by going to dadcentral.ca/dads.
Greg, I'm, as always, enjoying a lot of what you're sharing today, a lot of practical things that you're sharing, not only from your personal perspective, but from the studying and the work you're doing. Drew?
Yeah, I remember from one of our previous conversations, one of the programs that you did using sport and helping fathers with that very challenge of being more positive. Could you talk about maybe that program, what you were doing, and the differences that you saw when dads were able to apply like the guidance that you were giving them?
Sure. So I spent a lot of time around sports with my kids. We did get them involved in sports really at a really young age, and so we got to see lots of examples of good coaching and poor coaching. And it was not always, but it was often male caregivers that were serving in those coaches' roles. And so we thought it's hard to get men to attend our parenting programs. So if we can't get them to come to us, maybe we'll go to them. And so we invented or developed a soccer little league program where we invited men to bring their kids for the first hour or so. The kids practice soccer skills, how to dribble, shoot, pass. They learn the rules of the game. The men learned coaching strategies, things like how to catch kids being good, how to give effective instructions or behavioral requests, how to choose their battles. And then we put them together for a second hour, and the men were the coaches for the soccer game that came next. And we had a referee, the kids had jerseys, they were on a team. We sent a newsletter home every week saying who scored the goals and who was a good sport. We made it as much like a regular little league as we could. But the men's job was to practice the coaching strategies that they learned in that first hour directly with the kids in the sports game. And it was really interesting when we started this out. We piloted it, and we learned a few things. One was that the men really didn't like direct feedback from people like me during the game about how to work with their kids. They really shut down. Sometimes they didn't shut down. They told you, get away from me. I'm working with my kid right now. And so we used a model that wasn't so direct. It was a bit more facilitative, where the men would meet at each water break and talk about what they're doing to support their kid using the tools, and what they would do in the next quarter of the game. And it was really interesting. We've done this now with lots of different men, lots of different settings and places. And it always works the same way. The first week or two, nobody says anything. The men all kind of stare at their shoes when we ask them what they're supposed to say, and they don't say a lot of things during the game. But by about week 3 or 4 of this league, it is the most positive, fun, energetic sports league you've ever been around. The men are cheering for their own kid. They're cheering for the other kids. They're high-fiving one another. They're right along the sidelines, or sometimes right out on the field, getting engaged and involved with the kids. And the kids are smiling. They're beaming during the whole game, right? Because this is such a fun time, and everybody's getting the attention. And when I contrast that with community little leagues, you only get attention if you score a goal or make a basket. That's the only time anybody ever cheers or says good job, right? The rest of the time, it's basically do this, turn around, pay attention, do that sort of thing. Which we really try to flip that around and make it so that there's constant attention for all the good things the players are doing all the time. And my favorite part every week is at the end, after we conclude, and I watch the people walk off the field together. You just see a bunch of big, tall men with their arms around these short, 3rd or 4th grade kids walking away, having had a nice time together. And I think that that's largely what we're trying to accomplish, is building up and fostering this positive relationship between a parent and a child.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any information on like the feedback from the dads after having gone through the program, and then maybe even the feedback from the children?
Yeah, one bit of feed. So we're often working with kids with challenging behaviors, and so these are parents that are maybe walking a tougher path than a child who doesn't have such challenging behaviors. There might be kids that are getting in trouble at school, or might be causing stress within the household because the child is maybe acting out. And the one bit of feedback we get every single time from almost every single participant is, I didn't realize there were other people out there that were dealing with the same sorts of things I was dealing with. So simply having a group where the men can interact with one another and talk with one another, I think is really beneficial, because to some degree, to have a kid that's having some challenges is isolating. You don't want to go to the water cooler, and you're not going to brag on your kid getting kicked off the bus or having had problems with the kids in the neighborhood. And so you might not have an outlet to go to talk about, how do I deal with this, or how do I cope with this? So that's been really positive. And then I had a really great experience with one of the men we worked with. Bumped into him at the grocery store. I didn't recognize him at first. He's like, Greg, it's so great to see you. And then, clicked. I was going through my mind, where do I know this guy from? I remember you, and I remember your child, a real cute kid, full of energy, great personality. And he said, I got to tell you, you told us we got to say nice things to our kid every time he does something well. That changed my life. It changed the way my family functioned. It changed the way I got along with his mom. It changed the way he and I got along. I just started focusing on the positives, and things have been great. That was such an important bit of feedback for us. So I think that's something that maybe no one ever tells you how you're supposed to interact with your kid. And we're bombarded by media that has all kinds of mixed messages about how you're supposed to interact with a child. I think that there might be some benefit for men of talking with others that are walking in their same shoes to talk about those sorts of things in a way that is truly helpful.
Yeah, Drew, I know that one of the things, and it comes up throughout our conversations with our different friends here, the aspect of community and fathers having community. And I think Dr. Fabiano just nailed it on the head there about the importance of them talking with other dads and making that an as conscious effort to do that and have those resources, because sometimes the frontline resources can be the best resources.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think the focus, of catch your child doing something good and say something positive to them every time that happens is such a powerful, simple, not easy to do, but it's a simple and very powerful change. Not only in your mindset, because if you're saying, okay, I need to catch my child doing something good, you're looking for the good they do, but then also the act of naming the positive for your child and having them hear that, what it does for them. So I think that that's just an amazing and powerful takeaway, that the more we can do that as parents, as teachers, as mentors, as coaches, as leaders, what difference would that make?
And not only immediate, but in the long term.
Huge.
I think in the long term, yes, certainly in that situation when it's happening in real time, but the long term, you're setting up by your behaviors with your child the potential of how they're going to behave in their future.
Yeah. But I have a question about the mechanics of this. Is it just good enough to say, hey, great job today? Or, hey, good job how you did that? Or good job. Are we just going to be saying like, good job, good job, good job? Or is there some more to this? Like, is there some guidance you can give us as dads, as parents, teachers, leaders, whatever, on how to go about doing this?
So I think the good job is important, but what's even maybe more important is to link that together with a label of what you liked. So not just good job today, but you know what? I saw that you had to spend some time on the bench. I know you didn't want to be subbed out at that time in the game, but I was proud of the way you handled that. And when you got back in, you hustled your tail off and did a really good job out there, right? I want to convey what the praise is for, or what the compliment is for, so that the child knows when they go back out there what was the good thing that they did. And then as kids get older, so I'm working with teenagers now, they don't respond so much to the good job, good job, good job.
Right.
But they certainly still like attention. I can text them if they put their dish in the sink in the morning and they never do that, and I send them a text saying, boy, it was what a delight this morning. All the dishes were out of the sink when I left. Thank you. That sort of thing. It brightens up a day too, and comments on the behavior you're looking for.
Well, I think, Greg, and tell me if I'm on the wrong in this or not, but the more specific you can be about that positive action, it tells your child or children how focused you were when they were doing it. And they see that they were paying that full attention. And I think that could only build up, especially that self-confidence of that child. Am I incorrect?
No, that's exactly right. And also we would predict that they would do those behaviors more in the future, because now they know what it is that's gaining that attention. The big one I'm dealing with right now is I have two people driving, two adolescents driving in my house, and we want them to text when they arrive to their location, as we're, of course, as parents, terrified that they're not very good drivers yet because they're pretty new to it. And when they remember to text, so that I don't have to ask, did you get there safely? Always say, I really appreciate you remembering to do that. Thank you. And I think that's resulted in them being more mindful of that sort of behavior going forward. So even though they're older, they still respond to the positive attention.
I think, Drew, there'd be a great segment if we could do it with as many of our friends as possible with their kids. How calm or nervous were they when their child took their driver's test? I think be a little bit of interest. There's going to be some interesting little clips there. Like, how did you feel when your was going on their driving tests?
Yeah, you'd have to peel the parents off the ceiling. It's very nerve-wracking.
Drew, back to you. Yeah, well, just as we maybe wind down the conversation today, can you tell us maybe about your current research or projects, and anything that you can share that might help dads or anyone who's out there who supports dads?
So we're looking right now. We're working with parents of 3 to 6 year olds, looking at different approaches to including dads in positive preventive type programming for preschool age kids. We're looking at different models of approaches, and we do seem like we're centering on this idea that we have to include parent-child activities as part of any program. That standalone programs with just dads don't necessarily have the same kind of enthusiasm or engagement as the ones that include the shared parent-child activities. We're also we're starting to talk with some community partners about thinking about how can we cut right to the chase and work and train coaches who often are the dads or the male caregivers of the kids we're looking to reach. And instead of having a separate program, can we just integrate it right into community programs that already exist as a way to support the men that are and the women that are helping to coordinate those activities. And then we're always open for business. Anytime there's any good ideas that the people we work with suggest to us, or they tell us, you know what, I think we should maybe revisit this idea and do it a little bit differently, that usually starts our next idea for our next study.
Mm-hmm. Can you talk just a little bit more about the programming in communities with the parents and children and what you were looking at in that one?
So we learned back when I was doing my dissertation project in graduate school, when we compared a standalone parenting group to a group that included the coaches program, where the men were learning about the coaching strategies, but then engaging in the Little League game, that if you went to the coaches program, you were more likely to show up on time. You didn't leave early. You were more likely to attend. If you attended, you were more likely to bring your child with you. People that were in that group were even more likely to do the homework assignment they had each week to spend some special time with their child. If you just went to the program by yourself, those outcomes weren't as strong. And then we did a follow-up study where we looked to see how that program improved parenting skills. And it turns out it did. Parents that went through it were more positive with their kids and used less negative or corrective feedback. And so we thought, well, maybe this is something that we could adapt to use in other venues. So I have a colleague in New York City, Anil Chaco. He developed an approach in preschool settings where he used shared book reading as the activity as opposed to soccer. And he showed the same kinds of outcomes. The men were likely to show up for those sessions. They developed positive parenting strategies, but their kids also got better at early literacy skills because they were doing more reading with somebody in their household. We then thought, well, maybe we don't need to do it in our clinic. We can work with physical education structures and school counselors to do this in schools. And so we adapted the program for that setting. And then now we're downwardly extending it to a preschool age setting, 3 to 6 year olds. And because that's an age where what the research shows is men start to become a bit more involved with everyday child care and child activities. As kids are growing from infancy to toddlerhood, and they are out in the world more, there's more of a role for other caregivers, and oftentimes it's the male caregiver that's taking the kid out into the community or getting them involved in activities. And our thinking is if we can promote some positive parenting strategies amongst that group of dads, then in the long run, their kids will be more ready for school and more well-adjusted in terms of how they interact with other kids.
That's great. So integrating parents earlier and integrating parent and child activities together, especially focusing on some of the dads connecting with their kids or bringing their kids and doing that is really what you're doing right now.
And we get lots of feedback from the other caregiver that they enjoy the hour or 2 hours that they have alone without the dad or the kid in the household. It might be the only time they have free their whole week.
Right. Well, parents need some breaks. Absolutely. Awesome. Okay. Thank you. Ed, over to you.
Yeah, well, we're going to wrap it up, Greg. How can people get in touch with you?
They can certainly email me anytime for any reason. Happy to chat. I always enjoy hearing any perspectives about anything that I might be talking about and how it fits with the way other people are thinking. And like I said, we're always looking for our next research study. So any partners in the community that might want to explore how well what they're doing works, we'd be delighted to talk about working with them.
Fantastic. Well, on behalf of Drew, myself, and the Dad Central family, I'd like to say thank you again for all you have done, are doing, and will be doing in this area. We appreciate you taking time because obviously you got enough work to do, but you got 3 kids, 2 of them are driving now, and being able to laugh. And as we're recording this today, you two may not know, but your football teams are Drew's favorite football team, and your Bills are playing each other tonight. So I didn't want to get any beef, so I said I'd bring that up at the end. So I hope your friends after it anyways.
Both our teams are working hard lately, harder than they should.
Yeah, I don't have much hope for my team this year, but they did surprise me a couple weeks ago. So you never know.
Yes. So they beat Kansas City. So that was a big win. So Greg, thanks again. I know we'll continue to keep in touch, and anything we can do to potentially help you and the community that you serve, we're here for you. All right.
Thanks for the invite. I enjoyed the talk.
All bless you. Take care. Have a great day. Yes, sir. So what do we take home from today?
I always need to remind myself of focus on the good and identify those strengths and name them. And, I talked about the challenge with the cell phone in our house, and it's taken a lot of energy, and I have not focused enough on the good. So for me, it's a very relevant takeaway. And I want to do that for all of my kids moving forward on a more consistent basis.
Yeah. For myself, every father has a story.
Yes, we do.
So I'm very honored and blessed that we have a platform for fathers, whether they're professors, whether they're everyday dads, whether they're monster truck or monster jam drivers, that they are sharing their story with us. So always great. And I'm glad to get to know Greg better today and respect him even more because of this conversation. So always good stuff. Greg always brings a lot of good stuff. Go ahead, Drew.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think reminding ourselves that we're all human, right? We sometimes put others on pedestals, or we think, oh, I'm doing such a bad job. We put ourselves down, actually. When, if you take one simple thing and apply it, and then repeat that process over and over and over again, you're going to reach that long destination. So if you're a dad out there, don't beat yourself up. Just find one thing you can do it well, and just believe that you're going to make it through on the other side.
Absolutely. It's a journey. And when you do it well, celebrate it.
Well said.
And if you can, celebrate it with your child or children, because they're going to see that too. When you get something right, include them in that celebration. So as always, the Dad Central Show is sponsored by Doveman Plus Care. Doveman Plus Care believes that care is the best of a man, because when men care for themselves and others, there's a positive impact. So as we close out, as always, we'd love to hear from you. And the best way is through email. Email us podcast@dadcentral.ca. Give us your comments, feedback, guest suggestions. I don't want to bring, I'm one of the people that bring guests on here. We also have the First Lady of Dad Central, Lee, who's doing a great job bringing guests on also. But have suggestions for us, please, and thank you. And also, you can listen the podcast at dadcentral.ca/podcast, and especially on the Apple platform, leave us reviews. We appreciate them 150%. And then finally, dadcentral.ca, a bunch of free resources. Drew, you wanted to start something?
We haven't been doing this, but I want to let people know we've got a YouTube channel. So our YouTube channel has copies of the podcast as well as great little clips and insights from many of our guests that have given us knowledge bombs, as I would like to say. So remember, go check out our YouTube channel, go check out our podcast and some of the content that's on YouTube.
And finally, share it out. As always, thank you for your time. Remember to give yourselves grace. Don't just manage your time, manage your energy. We thank you for the time you take, whether you're a father, caregiver. We appreciate the time you take out of your lives to watch or listen to us. Be well, keep the faith, walk good, and we'll see you soon. Take care.